Welcome to today's webinar. Thank you very much for joining us today. My name is Terry Belcourt. I'm a registered nurse and the Director of Nursing Practice here at the SRNA. My role today is to help facilitate this webinar and to help, I get to be part of the content today as well, so that's exciting. Before we start, I would like to acknowledge that this presentation is being held on Aboriginal land and recognize the strength, resilience, and capacity of the Treaty 4 and Métis people in this land. I'm pleased to be here today with Donna Marin, and we're going to talk to you a little bit about the Toolkit for Managers of RNs. And we're doing some changes to it, and so just giving you some heads up and just sharing some new information with you. So just before we get started though, I'd like to just let you know that as a viewer of the presentation, you'll be able to ask your questions through the chat forum or through the Q&A. Please do ask us questions. We want to hear from you and want to know ways that we can make this toolkit better. You'll receive an evaluation tomorrow through email. And so again, we'd really like your feedback on the presentation. So I think that is it for the get started pieces. So we're going to start with a bit of a poll here. So just launched that. So we just want to know who's online with us today. So are you a manager of RNs, and are you an RN yourself? And that can be, I put RN, but it could be nurse practitioner as well. So please feel free to answer that. We'll just let that go. And while we're doing that, I should introduce Donna Marin, who's sitting across from me. Her and I have been working on this toolkit. We did the first bit of information and the first documents about 2 years ago, and now have added a few new documents and made some revisions. So welcome, Donna.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we've saturated our people here, so I'll share the results. So we don't have any managers in the group, and everybody is RN. So that's perfect. That's good information for us to know as we move ahead. I think one of the great things about this toolkit is that it's designed for managers. However, RNs and nurse practitioners can also use it to help educate their managers too and have some more information. So we just have one more poll here. Have you accessed the toolkit for managers of RNs? So in your practice related to your work, have you accessed any of the documents within the toolkit? Okay, we got everybody. So 2/3 have not accessed and 1 has. So again, good. I think you're in the right place then, because we're going to share a lot of great information with you today.
Great, thanks, Terry. So I just want to talk a little bit about the toolkit itself, the history and the purpose of the toolkit. So there were a few reasons why we initially started to develop this toolkit. In the practice area, practice consultation that advisors provide as a supportive service, we were hearing many times that some of our RN or NP members felt that their managers didn't really understand what RNs were held accountable and responsible for. And so there was an identified need through that feedback that we were hearing, and as well at annual meetings, there were times where managers themselves were identifying the kinds of situations where they were going into that role, but without a whole lot of support and often not a whole lot of time to really figure out all of the moving parts as quickly as they would like to. They did learn, of course, but was there a way to make that transition from direct care potentially or educator to manager a little more easy and with more support? And so the SRNA really identified it as a need, and then when the opportunity presented itself that we decided as an organization we were going to develop a toolkit. I really was interested in that because I came to the SRNA from having been a manager myself, and there were lots of things that I wish would have been available to me initially when I started as a manager. So there were many reasons historically why we decided to develop the toolkit, and so then once that decision was made, we kind of looked at the kind of toolkit that we wanted to develop and made some decisions about what those documents would look like. So we'll actually take you through the website to the toolkit, and then we can talk a little bit about the documents and how the toolkit's set up. So if you go to our homepage and to practice, and then go to nursing practice resources, down at the bottom, you're going to find something that says resource toolkits. So in here, when you click on it, there is a toolkit for managers of RNs. And some of those managers will be RNs themselves, and some of them will be other categories of healthcare providers or come to the role with a different background other than being a registered nurse. So the toolkit really was designed to provide at-a-glance information on a variety of RN practice questions. We wanted them to be focused on individual situations because then the manager could access those documents for that particular thing, knowing that when they had time, they could explore the whole kit and see what was available in there as well. It really was meant to identify the responsibilities of RNs in the workplace and the role of managers of RNs to help support RNs to meet their responsibilities and accountabilities, to identify resources available to support managers of RNs, and to answer some commonly asked questions. So there is an initial entry point to the toolkit, and that's gonna go here sometime soon. And I'll show you those documents. And so really we kind of tried to look at documents that, kind of were a list of fast facts for managers of RNs. And so we've reworked a lot of these documents. Well, we reworked all of the documents that currently exist in here, and we've developed some new ones. And they're going to be launched by the end of this month. We were hoping we'd be able to show them to you today, but they're not quite ready for us to do all of that probably. So this one has been updated. You'll notice that it has an original date on it and when it was last revised. And this is a fast facts. And so there's information in here about RN practice. It links the manager to, relevant documents and the SRNA website, just in case they're not already familiar with it. It talks about mandatory reporting and scope of practice and staffing decisions, talks about prescription review program, which is something that managers really need to be aware of if they are working with nurse practitioners. There's a section on licensing because sometimes managers, are so busy in their role that time moves very quickly, and so it's just a reminder of or it's brand new information for some of our managers about when registered nurses renew their license and what the registration year is, and a manager's responsibility to really verify that RNs working in the unit do hold an active license. And it makes it easy. Just click here and then you can go and verify your staff have a valid license. Talks about new grads, talks about grad nurses, And so then it offers some resources so that managers know when the annual meeting is, where registered nursing practice and NP and RNs with additional authorized practice and grad nurses and all of those things are discussed in May of each year. Talks about accessing news bulletins and what resources may be available to support the practice of RNs. So, and talks a little bit about our continuing competence program, which is mandatory for all registered nurses. So this document is a whole lot of information right up front for someone who is trying to figure out what they're needing to know about registered nurse practice. Then there's also a top 10 list here that, you know, if you're a brand new manager or someone who's been managing for a while, these are key organizations and resources that you may need to look at. And so this document is from 2018 and you know, has been redone, and the new one will be up on our website shortly. So it just kind of gives an overview of the SRNA, the Canadian Nurses Protective Society, that gives legal liability insurance to our members. And one of the things that you'll notice in this document, the title of nurse practitioner has changed. And so this document has been updated to reflect that and will be uploaded to our system soon. But you'll notice any of the ones that we have done, the date will be different, the color of the headings will be different, the language that is used, NPs or nurse practitioners will be referred to rather than registered nurse practitioners or RNNPs. And then it talks, you know, about resources that can be accessed to support practice. It talks about the Privacy Commissioner, CADITH, which is the Canadian Agency for Drugs and Technology and Health, and they have a ton of evidence on drugs and medical devices in Canada, and can be really beneficial to managers that are trying to make business cases for certain procedures done with certain equipment within their unit. So there's lots of really good information in here that would be helpful for managers. So that's really the entry point, is those two documents. Oh, dang it. I closed it right out. Let me just go back to that, and Terry will talk to you a little bit about the different sections that are in the website.
Sure. So on our website, underneath that getting started piece, then we divide it into three different areas, I guess. So clinical practice, professional practice, and scope of practice. And under each of those sections are related documents on those different topics. So for example, there we are, clinical practice. One of the ones that is, you know, as a non-RN who's managing RNs, you might have some clinical questions. And so this one helps guide you through some of the thinking, some of the questions to ask when you're faced with a practice question that you might not understand. So that was one that we had feedback on that would be really helpful. So it goes through, and each one of these documents then poses an initial question, and then it may offer some additional questions as well that might come up related to that topic. So, you know, in this one, I manage registered nurses, but I'm not an RN myself. What considerations should I make when addressing clinical practice questions, which I don't have the expertise to answer? So then we offer a few different questions that you could ask back. So just some coaching guidelines really within this one. This one is a little bit different. So you'll see there are the SRNA resources included at the bottom. When we move into some of the other ones, we have SRNA resources. We also include some external resources and then a key. So yeah, that looks like a good one. So documentation. So you'll notice that at the end of, again, it starts with a question or a scenario, and then the bullets that follow have a reference number. And so that refers to the resource key, which is found at the end of the document. And so then that will provide you with the document that's being referenced, as well as the page number where you can find that reference. So we've really tried to do some of the legwork for you, because we know you're super busy. So trying to bring in all those resources. So for this one, there's documentation, there's standards of practice, there's ethics related to the question. So all of those resources are referenced, so you can go and look at them really quickly, or just use this document as well for the reference, because we do try to include some of the language. It's not always exactly the same language, but some of the language from the actual ethical responsibility or practice standard.
So Terry, just a comment about that, same as we're talking about the standards.
Yeah.
At our annual meeting in May, the new registered nurse practice standards and registered nurse entry-level competencies from 2019 were passed by the membership, and they went to the Ministry of Health and were passed by the minister and were gazetted. And so as of October 30th, those are the standards that nurses will be held to. So all of the documents that we updated have the new practice standards statements included in them. And some of them we would have referenced applicable entry-level competencies or statements from the Code of Ethics to talk about the ethical principles that apply in those situations. So the professional practice section has a document on cultural competence, fatigue and fitness to practice, interprofessional relationships, and social media. So I just want to draw your attention to this one, fatigue and fitness to practice. We often get questions from managers, or in fact from registered nurses or NPs themselves, about the upper limit of hours that would be acceptable for a nurse to work. And so, you know, we really need all registered nurses to look at their own fitness to practice and how fatigue is impacting that. So I may be able to work, you know, X number of 12-hour shifts in a pay period, flipping back and forth from days to nights, you know, and not feel fatigued to the point where I'm, you know, scared that my practice is being compromised and might become unsafe. It may take another person considerably less number of shifts of an 8-hour nature to feel too tired to be able to exercise the kind of excellent judgment that they would like in their practice. And they may feel that it's impacting their fitness to be able to practice safely, consistently. So really, there isn't a specific magic number or an equation or you know, limit where, you know, the SRNA is going to impose that and say, this is only how much you can work safely. So we have updated this document, and you know, we do provide some resources in there, as Terry was saying. And so you know, they're all listed according to the indicators that pair up with our standards of practice, the competencies from the entry-level competency document, or the section and statement within the Code of Ethics. And then the last section is scope of practice.
So under scope of practice, we talk about coordination of care. There's one on delegation, graduate nurse practice. That's a very popular call that we receive from the practice team, especially around, you know, at those high volume times when new grads are coming out. We've one on medical assistance in dying, and the where's the list question. So that's Yeah, let's go into that one. We often get questions about, where's the list of activities or tasks that registered nurses can do? And so we say it in black and white, there's no list. And this document helps go through that a little bit, about why there can't be a list. It's just impossible to put all the different contexts of practice and all the activities that RNs can do into one list. And one activity might be appropriate in one area of practice and not appropriate in another. So we really can't say those things. But we can look at what the resources are and how they can be used when you're looking at scope of practice and looking at the things that you can, the activities and the things that you can have RNs looking at for their practice. Donna, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
No, that really is, essential for people to be able to access some of those resources and understand how scope of practice is determined. However, having said that, the SRNA practice team is always happy to hear from our members or anyone who is interested in registered nurse practice and wants to explore those issues. So we would gladly speak with a non-nursing manager or other category of nursing manager who's looking to determine what can happen in their unit and what should happen. So those sections, clinical practice, professional practice, and scope of practice, we have developed some new resources that are going to be uploaded to our website for our launch. And we currently have several that have been pretty much developed and just need to have a little bit of polishing work and approval to be able to be posted within our kit as well. And so one of the things that Terry and I really would like to encourage anyone who's looking at the kit or utilizing it to do is, if you have topics that you feel are really important, please send them to us, because we have an ongoing list of items that as we're able, we develop them and prepare them for inclusion in the kit. And so, you could reach out to either of us, whether you're watching this live right now or you're watching an archived version. We'd be very happy to hear from you, any feedback that you have about the toolkit or any suggestions for inclusion. Some of the ones that we have just recently developed are related to truth and reconciliation. It's RNs floating to other units. We're looking at electronic distractions in the workplace and how that can impact safe patient care and potentially the RN responsibilities and accountabilities for their practice. We're looking at patient abandonment, covert medication administration, supporting and mentoring novice nurses in the workplace. So we have a number of documents that are additions to the toolkit that you'll see very soon. And then we also have that list that we're continuing to develop. Anything on that, Terry?
No, I think that describes it really, really well. We're getting near the end of our content, so if you have questions, please do add them to the chat group so that we can address those. And as Donna said, if you have questions afterwards or other people that you come across have questions, our practice advisors are absolutely available during the week to answer those questions and would welcome them.
I'll just make one other comment. Something that Terry and I both learned from after we launched the toolkit initially. We really had the intent of offering it as supportive tools for the managers themselves. But what we were hearing back in terms of feedback was sometimes registered nurses or NPs themselves were accessing the documents to share with the manager within the workplace. But we also heard that sometimes managers were being appointed as a clinical manager, and there was also an HR, labor relations type manager, business partner that was looking after the finances and hiring and different things. And it was really valuable for managers to share these documents with those people as well that were part of that dyad managing areas, so that they could see what registered nurses were held accountable to. And it really helped people when decision making was happening, for them to be able to say, look, these are the things all here in this document, nicely, encapsulated, saying this is what I'm held accountable to, and this is how this decision or this potential, upcoming process that we're going to implement or whatever is going to impact my practice. And so they were able to say, these are the standards, competencies, and code of ethics that I have to uphold. And here's how, this looks for me if, certain decisions are made or planned or proposed. So, certainly it is available more broadly to any of those people. And again, the real only criteria for accessing this information is you have a need to understand registered nursing practice. You don't have to be a manager to access it.
Good points, Donna, thanks. So I don't see any questions. We do have a couple of last polling questions for you, so I'll put those up now. We're just looking at whether, now that you know more about the toolkit, that you intend to utilize it yourself, and if it's a resource that you would share with colleagues. So thank you for adding your responses there. I'll just wait a couple minutes. We've got a couple more people maybe that could respond. Okay. So we've got people that are very interested in utilizing it themselves and also sharing it with colleagues. So that's wonderful to hear. That really helps us get some good feedback and know that what we've put our effort into is something that's going to mark with people. So thank you very much for that.
Yes, thank you very much. And not that we want to discourage you from utilizing the current documents that are on the website, because of course there's value in those, but you may just want to wait until closer to the end of the month when we launch the whole package of revised and updated documents.
Yeah. So they'll all have the October 2019 date and have the red heading, so they'll easily be able to see that they've been updated. So I think that's it then. I don't see any questions, so thank you very much for joining us today. Donna, thank you.
Oh, thank you very much.
Tony's always in the room supporting us, so thank you, Tony.
Yes, thank you, Tony.
All right, have a great day, everyone.
Bye-bye.